The blizzard arrived with her, swirling through the door of the saloon like a ghostly companion, as Alina Vaughn stumbled inside, her thin coat doing nothing to protect her from the December cold of 1877. She stood dripping snow onto the rough wooden floor, her lips blue and trembling, her hands wrapped in cloth that had seen better days, and the entire room fell silent as 20 pairs of eyes turned to assess this unexpected arrival in Montezuma, Colorado. Adam Xavier sat at a corner table, nursing a whiskey that had long since gone warm. He had been in town for 3 weeks, having sold his cattle and lost his ranch hand to pneumonia 2 months back. The loneliness had settled into his bones deeper than any winter chill, and he found himself staring at the stranger with more interest than he had felt in anything for months. She was young, maybe 22 or 23, with dark hair plastered to her face and eyes that held a desperation he recognized all too well. The saloon owner, a portly man named Henderson, crossed his arms over his barrel chest. "We don't serve women in here unless they are working, and I've got all the girls I need." Alina's voice came out steadier than Adam expected, given her obvious exhaustion. "I am not looking for that kind of work. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, tend horses, anything honest. I will work for room and board until spring." Henderson laughed, and a few of the men joined him. "Girl, you look like you would blow away in the next strong wind. What ranch owner is going to take on someone who cannot even afford a proper coat?" Adam found himself standing before he had made a conscious decision to do so. His chair scraped against the floor, drawing attention his way. He was 30 years old, tall and broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. People in Montezuma had learned over the past weeks that he kept to himself, spoke little, and had a reputation from his home county as a fair man but not one to cross. "I will hear her out," Adam said, his voice cutting through the laughter. He gestured to the empty chair at his table. "Sit down before you fall down." Alina's eyes widened, showing their true color for the first time, a striking green that reminded him of spring grass. She made her way to his table with as much dignity as she could muster, though her legs shook with every step. Adam caught Henderson's eye and raised 2 fingers. "Hot coffee, and whatever stew you have got in the back." When Alina was seated, Adam took his time studying her. Up close, he could see the fine bones of her face, the intelligence in her eyes, and the stubborn set to her jaw that spoke of someone who had survived things that would have broken lesser people. Her hands, when she finally unwrapped them from the frozen cloth, were red and chapped but surprisingly graceful. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I have been walking since dawn. The stagecoach left me at the last town when I could not pay the full fare." "That's 15 miles in a blizzard," Adam observed. "You are either very brave or very desperate." "Both," Alina admitted. She accepted the coffee Henderson brought with a grateful nod, wrapping her hands around the mug as though it were the most precious thing in the world. "I left St. Louis 6 weeks ago. My father died of cholera, and the boarding house owner sold everything we had to cover back rent. I thought I could make it to California, but my money ran out in Kansas." Adam listened as she talked, noting the education in her speech and the way she held herself despite her circumstances. She had been a teacher's daughter, she explained, raised in modest comfort until disease had stolen everything. She had worked her way west doing laundry, mending, cooking, anything she could find, but winter had made jobs scarce and travel dangerous. "I am a hard worker," Alina said, meeting his eyes directly. "I know I do not look like much right now, but I learn fast and I do not give up. If you have work, any work, I will prove my worth." Adam took a long drink of his whiskey, thinking. His ranch was a half-day ride from Montezuma, a decent spread of land with good water and grass. He had cattle to tend, horses to break, a house that had not seen a woman's touch since his mother died 5 years ago. He had been planning to hire a ranch hand, maybe two, to help with the spring work. But as he looked at Alina, an idea formed that was either brilliant or completely insane. "I do not need a worker," Adam said slowly. "I need a wife more than a worker." The words hung in the air between them. Alina's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. Around them, the saloon had gone quiet again, everyone straining to hear this unexpected development. "Excuse me," Alina said carefully. Adam leaned forward, his forearms on the table. "I have a ranch, good land, a solid house. I can provide for a family. What I cannot do is keep living alone in a place that is meant for more than one person. I am tired of cooking my own meals, mending my own clothes, and spending every evening with nothing but my own thoughts. I am tired of being alone." "You are proposing marriage to a complete stranger," Alina said, but there was no mockery in her voice, only a cautious curiosity. "Folks have married for less practical reasons," Adam replied. "I am offering you safety, a home, and my name. In return, you would keep the house, help with the ranch work when needed, and be my partner in building something that lasts. I am not talking about some arrangement where we live like strangers under one roof. I am talking about a real marriage, with time to get to know each other, and see if we might make something good together." Alina set down her coffee and looked at him for a long moment. Adam forced himself to remain still under her scrutiny, letting her see him clearly. He knew what she would find: a man weathered by hard work and loss, but honest and capable. A man who had been raised to treat women with respect and keep his word once given. "Why me?" Alina asked finally. "You could put an advertisement in the paper for a mail-order bride. You could court someone from town. Because you walked 15 miles through a blizzard rather than give up," Adam said simply. "Because when Henderson laughed at you, you kept your head high. Because I have been watching men in this saloon for 3 weeks, and in 5 minutes you have shown more backbone than most of them. And because something in my gut tells me we might understand each other." The stew arrived, and Adam pushed it toward Alina. She picked up the spoon and began to eat, her hunger winning out over pride. He waited while she finished half the bowl, color slowly returning to her cheeks. "I do not love you," Alina said bluntly. "I do not love you either," Adam agreed. "But I respect what I have seen so far, and respect is a better foundation than most marriages start with. What if we do not suit each other? What if you decide I am not what you wanted? Then we would have to work it out, same as any married couple. I am not offering you an easy escape, Alina. I am offering you a commitment. But I am also promising that I will never raise a hand to you, never deny you food or shelter, and never humiliate you in front of others. I will work hard to provide for us both, and I will listen when you speak. That is the best promise I can make." Alina ate more stew, her mind clearly working through the implications. Adam did not rush her. Outside, the wind howled and snow continued to fall. Without shelter, she would not survive the night, and they both knew it. But he did not want her to agree just from desperation. He wanted her to see the real possibility in what he was offering. "I want children someday," Alina said. "If we are talking about a real marriage, I need to know you are open to that." "I want children too," Adam said, and felt the truth of it in his chest. "A ranch needs family to make it a home. I will want to continue my education. My father taught me to value learning, and I will want books and newspapers, a chance to keep my mind sharp. The house has a library that has not been touched in years. My mother loved reading. You would be welcome to it all, and I will make sure you get whatever new books you want." Alina finished her stew and folded her hands on the table. This is madness. Probably, Adam agreed. When would this marriage take place? Tomorrow, if you are willing. The preacher in town performs services every morning. We could spend tonight at the boarding house, separate rooms, so you can think it over without freezing to death. In the morning, you can give me your final answer. And if I say no, then I will pay for your room for a week and help you find other work. I am not trying to trap you, Alina. I am trying to offer you a choice. She studied his face, searching for deception or hidden cruelty, but Adam had nothing to hide. He was exactly what he appeared to be, a lonely rancher making an unconventional proposal to a woman who needed exactly what he could offer. "All right," Alina said finally. "Separate rooms tonight. I will give you my answer in the morning." Adam paid for their meals and settled the cost of 2 rooms at the boarding house across the street. The proprietor, a widow named Mrs. Chen, was more than happy to provide Alina with a hot bath and some clean clothes borrowed from her own wardrobe. Adam waited downstairs, smoking a cigarette and wondering if he had lost his mind. But when he finally climbed the stairs to his own room, he felt something he had not experienced in months: hope. The blizzard continued through the night, piling snow against the windows and howling like a living thing. Adam barely slept, alternating between certainty that Alina would accept his proposal and fear that she would disappear with the morning light. He was up before dawn, shaving carefully and putting on his best shirt, the dark blue one his mother had made years ago. When he came down to the dining room, Alina was already there. She wore a simple gray dress borrowed from Mrs. Chen, and her hair was clean and braided down her back. She looked younger in the morning light, but also stronger, as though the bath and sleep had restored something essential. When their eyes met, Adam felt his heart kick against his ribs. "I have been thinking all night," Alina said as he sat down across from her. Mrs. Chen brought coffee and biscuits, then discreetly left them alone. "About my options, about what kind of life I might have if I continue on as I have been. The truth is, I was not going to survive much longer. Another few weeks, maybe a month if I was lucky. You are offering me a chance to not just survive, but to actually live." Adam waited, hardly breathing. "I also thought about what you said, about respect being a better foundation than most marriages start with. My parents married for love and they were happy, but I watched them build their respect for each other day by day, year by year. Maybe we are just doing things in a different order." "So what is your answer?" Adam asked quietly. Alina reached across the table and offered him her hand. "Yes. I will marry you." Her hand was warm in his, delicate but with calluses that proved she was no stranger to work. Adam felt something shift in his chest, a wall he had built around his heart developing its first crack. "Then let us go see the preacher," he said. The wedding was a brief affair in the small church at the edge of town. The preacher, Reverend Walsh, raised his eyebrows at the hasty arrangement but agreed to perform the ceremony. Mrs. Chen and Henderson acted as witnesses, with Mrs. Chen looking pleased and Henderson looking skeptical. The church was cold despite the small stove in the corner, and Alina shivered in her borrowed dress. Adam found himself speaking the vows with more conviction than he had expected. Alina's voice was steady as she repeated her own promises, her green eyes never leaving his face. When Reverend Walsh pronounced them husband and wife, Adam leaned down and kissed her gently, briefly, a promise of respect rather than passion. "Well," Alina said as they stepped back out into the snow, "I suppose I am Mrs. Xavier now." "We will head to the ranch once the weather clears," Adam said. "Probably tomorrow morning if this storm breaks. We can stay at the boarding house another night." But Alina shook her head. "I would rather go today if we can manage it. I want to see my new home." Adam studied the sky. The snow had lessened to occasional flurries and the wind had died down. It would be a cold ride but manageable. All right. I will get the horses ready and buy supplies. Can you pack what you need? I do not have anything to pack, Alina reminded him with a slight smile. Everything I owned was lost or sold weeks ago. Then we will get you what you need, Adam said firmly. He took her to the general store and watched as she selected practical items. A warm coat, sturdy boots, gloves, a few changes of clothes and personal necessities. Alina protested at the cost, but Adam silenced her with a look. You are my wife now. Let me provide for you properly. The word wife seemed to settle something between them, making the arrangement feel more real. Alina touched the new coat with something like wonder, running her fingers over the thick wool. They left Montezuma at midday, riding double on Adam's sturdy bay, gelding with the pack horse trailing behind carrying their supplies. Alina sat in front of Adam, and he kept one arm around her waist to steady her. She was warm against him despite the cold, and he found himself acutely aware of every breath she took, every small movement she made. The ride to the ranch took 5 hours through snow-covered landscape. Adam pointed out landmarks as they traveled, the creek that never froze completely, the stand of aspen trees that turned gold in autumn, the ridge where he had once seen a mountain lion. Alina listened intently, asking questions that showed she was already thinking of this land as her own. The sun was setting when they finally crested the last hill, and Adam's ranch came into view. The house was a solid 2-story structure built of logs and stone, with a wide porch and glass windows that were a luxury in this country. Behind it stood a barn, a stable, and several outbuildings. Fences marked off pastures where cattle stood in dark clusters against the snow. It is beautiful, Alina said softly. It is home, Adam replied. Our home now. He helped her down from the horse and led her to the front door. The inside of the house was cold, the stove having been out for days, but it was clean and well built. Adam quickly got a fire going in both the kitchen stove and the fireplace in the main room while Alina explored. The house had a large kitchen, a sitting room with the fireplace, a small study lined with bookshelves, and upstairs, 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom had a large bed frame and mattress, a wardrobe, and a window overlooking the eastern pastures. It had been his parents' room once, and Adam had not slept in it since his mother's death. This will be our room, Adam said, setting Alina's packages on the bed. Unless you would prefer one of the others. Alina looked at the big bed, then at him. This one is fine. But Adam, I need to be honest with you. I am not ready for everything that usually comes with marriage. Not yet. Adam had been expecting this. I understand. We can take our time. I will sleep in one of the other rooms until you are comfortable with me. The relief in Alina's eyes was obvious, but also a hint of curiosity. You are not angry. Why would I be angry? I asked you to marry me yesterday. I cannot expect you to trust me completely after such a short time. Trust is earned, Alina, not demanded. That night, they shared their first meal as husband and wife. Alina proved to be an excellent cook, turning the basic supplies Adam had in his pantry into a satisfying stew. They ate at the kitchen table, talking about practical matters. The ranch's schedule, the cattle's needs, the chickens Alina discovered in the henhouse who had somehow survived Adam's neglect. As the evening wore on, their conversation drifted to more personal topics. Adam told her about his parents, how they had built this ranch from nothing, how his father had died in a fall from a horse, and his mother had followed a year later from a broken heart. Alina spoke of her childhood in St. Louis, her father's love of books and learning, her mother who had died when Alina was 10. We are both orphans then, Alina observed. Maybe that is why I felt like I knew you, Adam said. We have both lost everything and had to find a way to keep going. When it was time for bed, Adam showed Alina to the master bedroom and carried his own blankets to the room across the hall. He lay awake for a long time, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person in the house. Water being poured for washing, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of blankets. It was strange and comforting all at once. The days settled into a rhythm. Adam woke before dawn to tend the animals and check on the cattle. Alina rose shortly after, starting the fire and preparing breakfast. They worked together on many tasks, repairing fences, mucking stalls, chopping wood. Alina proved to be as capable as she had claimed, learning quickly and never complaining about the hard work. In the evenings, after supper was cleared away, they would sit by the fire. Alina discovered Adam's mother's collection of books and began reading aloud, her voice bringing life to words Adam had never paid much attention to before. He found himself looking forward to these quiet hours, watching the firelight play across Alina's face as she read, seeing her passion for stories and ideas. 3 weeks into their marriage, a late January storm trapped them inside for 2 full days. They played cards, cooked elaborate meals to pass the time, and talked more than they ever had before. Alina told him about her dream of maybe teaching children someday, of passing on her father's love of learning. Adam shared his vision for the ranch, how he wanted to improve the herd, maybe add horses for breeding. You should do it, Alina said firmly. The horse breeding, I mean. You have a gift with them. I have seen how they respond to you. It takes capital to start something like that, Adam said. Then we will save. We will build toward it together. The word together sent warmth through Adam's chest. Somewhere in the past weeks, this arrangement had started to feel like a real partnership. It was during that storm that Alina first touched him voluntarily. They were sitting by the fire, and Adam had been telling a story about his childhood, about the time he had tried to ride a wild Mustang and ended up in a creek. Alina laughed, a genuine sound of delight, and impulsively reached out to touch his arm. The moment stretched between them. Alina's hand was warm through his shirt sleeve, and her eyes were bright with amusement. Adam covered her hand with his own, a gentle acknowledgement of the gesture. Thank you, Alina said softly. For what? For being patient with me, for not demanding more than I am ready to give, for making me feel safe. You do not have to thank me for treating you with basic decency, Alina. You would be surprised how rare that is, she replied. Then, before Adam could respond, she leaned in and kissed his cheek. It was a brief, almost shy gesture, but it meant more to Adam than any passionate embrace. That night, when they went to their separate rooms, Adam felt the distance between them more acutely than ever before. He was falling in love with his wife, he realized. With her quick mind and capable hands, her stubbornness and her surprising moments of tenderness. He loved the way she sang while she cooked, the way she talked to the horses, the way she challenged his opinions and made him think about things differently. But he had promised to let her set the pace, and he would keep that promise no matter how much he wanted to cross the hallway and tell her what he was feeling. February brought a thaw, and with it, neighbors. The Prescotts, whose ranch bordered Adams to the north, came calling one Sunday afternoon. Martin Prescott was a gruff man in his 50s who had been ranching in Colorado since before the territory became a state. His wife, Sarah, was a warm woman with sharp eyes that took in everything. So this is the bride we heard about, Sarah said, embracing Alina despite having just met her. Married in a blizzard and whisked away to this isolated ranch, you are either very brave or very foolish, dear. A bit of both, I think. Alina said with a smile that Adam had come to recognize as her polite but wary expression. They had dinner together, and Adam watched proudly as Alina charmed his neighbors with her intelligence and grace. She asked Sarah about gardening in the mountain climate, listened to Martin's advice about cattle breeding, and held her own in conversations about territory politics and water rights. After the Prescotts left, Alina sagged against the closed door. That was exhausting. "You were perfect," Adam said. "I was terrified. What if they did not like me? What if they thought you had made a terrible mistake?" Adam crossed to her and took her hands in his. "Alina, you could never be a mistake, and anyone who spends 5 minutes with you can see how remarkable you are." She looked up at him, her green eyes searching his face. "You really believe that, do not you? Every word." Alina raised up on her toes and kissed him, not on the cheek this time but on the mouth. It was gentle and exploratory, a question more than a statement. Adam responded carefully, keeping his hands on her waist, letting her maintain control. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed. "I think I am ready," Alina whispered, "to be your wife in every way if you still want that." Adam's heart was pounding. "Are you sure?" "I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am sure." "Adam, these past weeks, you have shown me what kind of man you are. You have been kind and patient and respectful. You have made me laugh and made me think. You have given me a home and a partnership. I am not in love with you yet, but I trust you, and I think that might be even more important." "I am in love with you," Adam admitted. "I have been for weeks now, but I did not want to say anything until you were ready to hear it." Alina's eyes widened, then softened. "Say it again." "I love you, Alina Xavier. I love your strength and your stubbornness. I love the way you never give up, the way you throw yourself into every task. I love listening to you raid, watching you work, sitting across from you at meals. I love that you are my wife, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving myself worthy of you." Tears spilled down Alina's cheeks, but she was smiling. "I am falling in love with you too. I think I have been for a while, but I was afraid to admit it, afraid it was too fast, too unlikely." "Nothing about us has been conventional," Adam said, wiping her tears with his thumbs. "Why should falling in love be any different?" He kissed her again, deeper this time, and felt her arms come around his neck. When he lifted her and carried her up the stairs, she did not protest. And when he laid her on the big bed in the master bedroom, she pulled him down beside her with a trust that humbled him. That night, their marriage became complete in every sense. Adam was gentle and patient, mindful of Alina's inexperience, and when she cried out his name in pleasure and surprise, he felt a satisfaction deeper than any he had ever known. They lay tangled together afterward, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I was so cold when I walked into that saloon," Alina murmured. "I thought I was going to die in that storm, that I had finally reached the end of my luck, and instead I found you." "We found each other," Adam corrected, "and I am never letting you go." Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers and new calves. Alina threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm, helping with the branding, learning to ride properly, even assisting with a difficult birth when one of the cows struggled. She was fearless and capable, and Adam fell more in love with her every day. In April, Alina announced that she was pregnant. Adam received the news with a mixture of joy and terror, suddenly aware of all the things that could go wrong. But Alina was confident and healthy, blooming with the pregnancy in a way that made her even more beautiful. They prepared the smallest bedroom as a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and building a cradle from pine wood. The Prescotts became regular visitors, with Sarah offering advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Other neighbors came calling too, and Adam realized that Alina had created a community around them, bringing warmth and life to a ranch that had been lonely for too long. In November, during the first snowfall of the season, Alina went into labor. Sarah Prescott came to help, and Adam paced the length of the house for 12 anxious hours. When he finally heard the cry of a baby, he took the stairs 2 at a time. Alina lay exhausted but radiant in their bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Adam approached with trembling hands and looked down at the smallest, most perfect human he had ever seen. The baby had dark hair and was crying with impressive lung power, his little fists waving in indignation at being born. "A son," Adam breathed. "We have a son. We need to name him," Alina said. "I was thinking Andrew after my father." "Andrew Xavier," Adam tested. "It is perfect." He sat on the edge of the bed and put his arm around Alina, the 3 of them forming a complete unit. Looking at his wife and son, Adam thought back to that snowy day nearly a year ago when a desperate woman had walked into a saloon and changed his life forever. "Thank you," he said to Alina. "For what?" "For saying yes. For taking a chance on a stranger's crazy proposal. For making this house a home." Alina smiled up at him, tired but happy. "Thank you for needing a wife more than a worker. Thank you for seeing me when I had nothing, when I was at my lowest point, and offering me not just survival but a real life. Thank you for loving me. Always," Adam promised, kissing her forehead. "I will always love you." The years that followed were not without challenges. There were harsh winters and dry summers, cattle lost to disease and crops damaged by hail. But Adam and Alina faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each obstacle they overcame. Andrew grew into a sturdy boy with his mother's intelligence and his father's steady temperament. When he was 3, Alina gave birth to twin girls, Emily and Alice, who filled the house with laughter and chaos. 2 years after that came another son, Aaron, completing their family. Alina started a small school in Montezuma, teaching the children of ranchers and miners who had settled in the area. She rode into town twice a week, her saddlebags full of books and supplies, returning home with stories about her students' progress. Adam was proud of her independence and the way she balanced being a mother and a teacher. The horse breeding program Adam had dreamed of became a reality. He developed a reputation for training quality animals, and people came from as far as Denver to purchase his stock. The ranch prospered, growing from a modest operation to one of the most successful in the county. On their 10th anniversary, Adam took Alina back to Montezuma, to the same saloon where they had first met. Henderson was still the owner, grayer now and more weathered, but he remembered them. "Well, if it is not the crazy cowboy who proposed marriage to a stranger," Henderson said with a laugh. "I lost a bet on you too. Thought you would be divorced within a year." "Sorry to disappoint you," Alina said sweetly, her arm linked through Adam's. They sat at the same table where Adam had first offered Alina his unusual proposal. The saloon had not changed much, still smoky and loud, still filled with rough men and the smell of whiskey. But everything else had changed. The desperate, frozen woman and the lonely cowboy were gone, replaced by a couple who knew each other's thoughts before they were spoken, who moved in perfect synchronization, who had built a life together that was richer than either had ever imagined. "You ever regret it?" Adam asked as they sipped their drinks. Saying yes to a complete stranger, Alina's eyes, still as green as spring grass, sparkled with amusement. Every day. Adam's face must have shown his shock because Alina laughed and squeezed his hand. "I am teasing you, my love. How could I regret the best decision I ever made? You gave me everything, a home, a family, a purpose. You showed me what it means to be truly loved. You did the same for me," Adam said seriously. I was just existing before you came into my life. You taught me how to live again." They kissed across the table, not caring who saw them. When they finally pulled apart, Alina had tears in her eyes. "Take me home, Adam." "Our home," he corrected. "Our home," she agreed. They rode back through familiar country, the land they had worked and loved for a decade. The children would be waiting with Sarah Prescott, who had agreed to watch them for the night. Tomorrow they would return to the noise and demands of family life. But tonight was just for them, a chance to remember where they had started and celebrate how far they had come. The house stood solid and welcoming on its hill, lights burning in the windows. Adam helped Alina down from her horse and they stood for a moment, looking at what they had built together. "I need to tell you something," Alina said. "I am pregnant again." Adam felt joy surge through him. "Are you sure?" "Very sure. Sarah has been making jokes about it for weeks. She says I have a certain glow." Adam pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. 5 children. They would have 5 children, a house full of love and laughter and life. It was more than he had ever dreamed of on those lonely nights before Alina had walked into his world. "I love you," he said fiercely. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "I love you too," Alina replied. "My cowboy, my husband, my partner, my everything." They went inside together, closing the door on the night. Upstairs in the master bedroom, they made love with the passion and tenderness of long familiarity, knowing each other's bodies as well as they knew their own. Afterward, Alina curled against Adam's side, her hand resting on his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "Tell me again how we met," she said sleepily. "You walked into a saloon during a blizzard," Adam began, his voice a rumble under her ear. "You were half frozen and completely desperate, asking for work, and I took one look at you and knew my life was about to change. You told me you needed a wife more than a worker," Alina continued the familiar story, "and you thought I was insane. I did not think you were insane. I thought the situation was insane, but there was something about you, Adam, something in your eyes that told me you were sincere, that you were offering me a real chance at life." "Best gamble I ever took," Adam said. "Best gamble we both took," Alina corrected. They drifted into sleep wrapped around each other, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together. The desperate woman and the lonely cowboy had found something rare in the harsh landscape of the Colorado mountains, a love that warmed them through the coldest winters and sustained them through the hardest times. The 5th child was another boy, born in late spring with his mother's green eyes. They named him Alexander, and he completed their family. The house that had once been quiet and empty was now filled with the sounds of children playing, arguing, laughing. Alina managed the chaos with grace, teaching her children to read and think, while Adam taught them to ride and work the land. As the years passed, Adam and Alina grew older together. Gray touched their hair, lines formed around their eyes, but the love between them only deepened. They faced sorrows, the loss of their parents' generation, difficult years on the ranch, a bout of scarlet fever that nearly took Emily. But they also experienced profound joys, watching their children grow, seeing Andrew marry and start his own family, holding their first grandchild. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party. The house was packed with family and neighbors, all celebrating the unlikely love story that had become legendary in Montezuma. The tale of the desperate woman and the cowboy who had proposed marriage after 5 minutes had been told and retold, embellished and romanticized, until it had taken on the quality of myth. But Adam and Alina knew the truth. Their love had not been love at first sight. It had been built slowly, carefully, through hard work and honest communication, through respect and trust and daily choices to be kind to each other. It had grown from a practical arrangement into something profound, a partnership that had sustained them through everything life could throw at them. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Alina asked as they danced together, her head on his shoulder. "In the boarding house before we married." "I said a lot of things that night," Adam replied. "You said respect was a better foundation than most marriages start with." "You were right, Adam. We built everything on that respect. The love came later, but it grew strong because of that foundation." "I was terrified you would say no," Adam admitted, "that you would think I was taking advantage of your desperation." "I was terrified I was making the biggest mistake of my life," Alina countered. "But my instincts told me to trust you, and thank God I listened." They kissed while their children cheered and their grandchildren giggled. The party continued late into the night, filled with food and music and stories. When everyone finally left and the house was quiet again, Adam and Alina sat on their porch, watching the stars. 25 years, Alina mused. A quarter of a century since I walked into that saloon. "Best day of my life," Adam said simply. "Mine too. Even though I was half dead from cold and had no idea what I was doing. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were surviving. You were fighting. You were refusing to give up." Alina leaned her head on Adam's shoulder. "We have had a good life, have not we?" "The best," Adam agreed. "And we still have years ahead of us. Decades, if God is willing." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes after years of true partnership. The land stretched out before them, the ranch they had built together, the legacy they would leave their children. It was a tangible representation of their love, proof that two strangers could create something lasting if they were willing to work for it. More years passed. Adam's hair went completely white, and Alina developed arthritis that made her beautiful hands ache. But they still worked the ranch together as much as they were able, unwilling to fully hand over the reins to the next generation. They took walks in the evenings, moving slower now but still together, still talking and laughing and planning for the future. When Adam was 65, he had a close call with a fall from a horse. Alina nursed him through cracked ribs and a concussion, scolding him for taking risks at his age even as she tenderly cared for him. The experience shook them both, a reminder that their time together was not infinite. "I need you to promise me something," Adam said one night as Alina helped him into bed. "Anything," she replied. "If something happens to me, if I go first, I need you to promise you will not shut down. You will keep living, keep teaching, keep being the remarkable woman you are." "I cannot stand the thought of you fading away without me." Alina's eyes filled with tears. "Do not talk like that. We have to talk about it sometime, love. We are not young anymore, and I need to know you will be all right." "I will never be all right without you," Alina said fiercely. "But I promise I will keep living. For our children and grandchildren, if not for myself. But Adam, you have to promise me the same thing." "I promise," Adam said, "though I hope we both have many more years together." They did have more years, precious ones. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. Andrew took over most of the ranch operations, with his siblings helping in various ways. The grandchildren multiplied, filling the house with new generations. Adam and Alina became the beloved matriarch and patriarch of a sprawling family, dispensing wisdom and love in equal measure. On their 40th anniversary, Adam arranged a surprise. He took Alina back to that saloon in Montezuma one more time. Henderson was long dead, but the new owner had heard the story and welcomed them warmly. The place had been updated over the decades, but still retained its essential character. They sat at a table near where their table had been, drinking coffee now instead of whiskey and stew. Adam reached across and took Aliner's hand, marveling at how well it still fit in his despite all the years that had passed. 40 years ago, I made the craziest proposal any man has ever made, Adam said. And I was crazy enough to accept it, Aliner finished with a smile. Do you know what I think about when I look back on our life together? Adam asked. Tell me. I think about all the moments, not just the big ones like births and weddings, but the small ones. The way you sing when you cook. The way you always touch my shoulder when you walk past my chair. The way we can communicate with just a glance after all these years. Those are the moments that made our marriage, Aliner. The tiny, daily choices to love each other. Aliner's eyes were suspiciously bright. You are going to make me cry in public, old man. You are beautiful when you cry, Adam said, just as he had said countless times over the decades. And you are still a shameless flatterer. They laughed together, the sound of it worn smooth by time but no less genuine. When they left the saloon, Adam helped Aliner into their wagon. They did not ride horses anymore, their bodies too old for that particular adventure. But they still had each other, still had the ranch, still had the family they had created from nothing but determination and love. The years continued their relentless march. Adam and Aliner grew more fragile, their children hovering protectively, their grandchildren treating them like precious treasures. But they remained sharp in mind and devoted to each other, holding hands whenever they were near each other, stealing kisses when they thought no one was watching. On a clear spring morning, 45 years after their unconventional wedding, Adam woke to find Aliner looking at him with an expression he could not quite read. "What is it?" he asked, immediately alert despite his years. "I was just thinking about that first morning," Aliner said. "When I woke up in the boarding house and had to decide whether to marry you. I was so scared, Adam, but also hopeful in a way I had not been in months. You offered me a future when I thought I had none. You gave me a reason to live," Adam replied. "I was just going through the motions before you arrived. You brought light back into my life. Promise me something," Aliner said, echoing his words from years ago. "Anything. Promise me that when one of us goes, the other will remember the joy. Not the grief, not the loss, but all the happiness we have had. Promise me you will remember me smiling." Adam pulled her close, feeling the fragility of her bones, the thinness of her skin, all the ways time had marked her. But when he looked at her face, he still saw the desperate, brave young woman who had walked into a saloon during a blizzard. "I promise," he said, "but I am not ready to let you go yet." "I am not going anywhere," Aliner assured him. "We still have time." They did have time, though not as much as they would have liked. Aliner's heart, which had been so strong for so long, began to fail. She remained positive, refusing to be treated like an invalid, insisting on doing what she could for as long as she could. Adam stayed by her side constantly, and their children marveled at the devotion that still burned so brightly after nearly half a century. One evening, as they sat together on their porch watching the sunset, Aliner turned to Adam with a peaceful expression. "It has been the most remarkable life," she said softly. "From that moment in the saloon to this very second, every bit of it remarkable. Thank you, Adam, for choosing me." "Thank you for choosing me back," Adam replied, his throat tight. Aliner squeezed his hand. "I would do it again in a heartbeat. Walk into that saloon, say yes to your crazy proposal, build this life with you. I would do it all again exactly the same way." "So would I," Adam said. "Every single moment." They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Two people who had gambled on each other, and one more than they could have ever imagined. The desperate woman and the lonely cowboy had become Aliner and Adam Xavier, pillars of their community, parents and grandparents, partners in every sense of the word. Aliner's heart finally gave out on a summer morning, with the windows open and wildflowers blooming outside. She died in the bed she had shared with Adam for 48 years, holding his hand, surrounded by her children. Her last word was his name, spoken with love. Adam's grief was profound but not bitter. He had promised to remember the joy, and he kept that promise. He told stories about Alina to anyone who would listen, keeping her memory alive through words. He continued to live on the ranch, tended by his children but still independent, still strong in his own way. On the 1-year anniversary of Alina's death, Adam sat at her grave on the hill overlooking the ranch. He talked to her the way he always had, sharing news about the family, discussing decisions about the ranch, telling her how much he missed her. "I kept my promise," he said. "I have been living, not just existing. But Alina, I am so tired. I am ready to rest now, ready to be with you again." Adam Xavier died peacefully in his sleep that night in the same bed where Alina had died. He was 77 years old and had lived every single day since her death, missing his wife, but honoring her memory through action. The family buried him next to Alina on the hill, their headstones simple but inscribed with words that told their story. She walked into his life during a blizzard. He offered her forever. Together they built a legacy of love. The ranch passed to Andrew and his family, who continued the traditions Adam and Alina had established. The story of their courtship became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren knew about the desperate woman in the saloon, the cowboy who needed a wife more than a worker, and the love that had grown from such unlikely beginnings. In Montezuma, the story became part of local history. The saloon where they met eventually closed, but a plaque marked the location, commemorating the romance that had captured the imagination of the entire town. Couples came from all over Colorado to see where Adam Xavier had made his famous proposal, hoping some of that magic would rub off on them. But the people who remembered Adam and Alina best were not interested in the romance of their meeting. They remembered instead the way Adam had looked at Alina even in their 70s, as though she were still the most beautiful woman in the world. They remembered the way Alina had touched Adam's shoulder whenever she passed, a small gesture of connection and affection. They remembered two people who had worked side by side for nearly 50 years, who had built something lasting not through grand romantic gestures, but through daily choices to love and respect each other. The house on the hill stood solid through more generations, sheltering the descendants of Adam and Alina Xavier. The ranch continued to prosper, guided by the principles they had established: hard work, fair dealing, respect for the land and animals. Their legacy was not just in their children and grandchildren, but in the way they had lived, the example they had set of what marriage could be when built on the right foundation. And on winter nights, when the snow fell soft and thick over the Colorado mountains, people in Montezuma still told the story of the blizzard that had brought two souls together. They talked about the desperate woman who had nothing left but her courage, and the lonely cowboy who saw past her circumstances to the person she could become. They spoke of a marriage proposal given after 5 minutes and accepted after one night of thought, and the unlikely, beautiful life that had followed. It became the kind of story people told their daughters and sons when they asked about love, about taking chances, about building something real. It was a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the most desperate moments, that love does not always arrive in expected ways, and that two people willing to work together can create something extraordinary. The snow fell as it had that first night so many years ago, covering the land in white silence. But in the warm houses scattered across the territory, people gathered around fires and told stories. And among all the tales of the Old West, of cowboys and outlaws, of gold strikes and cattle drives, the story of Adam and Eleanor Xavier remained a favorite. Because it was a story about love, real love, the kind that starts with respect and grows into something that outlasts even death itself. Years became decades, became generations. The territory became a state, the Wild West faded into history, and the world changed in ways Adam and Eleanor could never have imagined. But their story remained, passed down through their family and through the community they had helped build. It was a testament to the power of choice, of courage, of two people deciding to take a chance on each other when they had every reason not to. And on a hill in Colorado, two headstones stood side by side, marking the final resting place of a woman who walked 15 miles through a blizzard rather than give up, and a man who saw something remarkable in her desperation. They had lived, loved, and left behind a legacy that money could never buy. A family who knew what real love looked like, and a community that remembered what it meant to take a chance on someone. The story ended the way all good love stories should, with two people who had found each other against impossible odds, who had built a life together that exceeded their wildest dreams, and who had loved each other faithfully until death parted them. They had started as strangers in a saloon during a blizzard and ended as legends, proof that sometimes the craziest decisions turn out to be the wisest ones, and that love, real love, can grow anywhere if given the chance. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived on the ranch, working the land their ancestors had claimed and cultivated. When they looked out over the pastures and hills, they saw not just a beautiful landscape, but the physical manifestation of a promise made long ago between two people who had nothing but hope and determination. They knew the story by heart, had heard it dozens of times, but it never got old. It was their heritage, their foundation, the beginning of everything they were. And sometimes, on winter evenings when the snow fell heavy and the wind howled around the house, they could almost imagine they heard voices from the past. A desperate woman asking for work, a lonely cowboy making an outrageous proposal, and two people taking the first tentative steps toward a love that would echo through generations. It was a story worth remembering, worth retelling, worth celebrating. Because in a time and place known for violence and hardship, for transience and uncertainty, Adam and Eleanor Xavier had created something permanent. They had built a love that lasted, a family that thrived, and a legacy that inspired everyone who heard their tale. The blizzard that had brought Eleanor to Montezuma became part of the family mythology, along with Adam's bold proposal and Eleanor's courageous acceptance. But the real story was not in that dramatic beginning. It was in the 48 years that followed, in the small moments and daily choices, in the partnership and respect and growing love. It was in the way they had faced challenges together, celebrated victories together, and built a life that was richer than either could have imagined. And so the story ends, not with their deaths but with the continuing life of what they created. The ranch still stands. The family still gathers. The love still echoes through the generations. Adam and Eleanor Xavier, who started as desperate strangers and became devoted partners, left behind something more valuable than gold or land. They left behind proof that love, real love, built on respect and trust and daily commitment, can transform everything. Their story became a beacon for anyone who has ever felt lost, anyone who has ever had to make an impossible choice, anyone who has ever wondered if taking a chance could lead to something beautiful. And the answer their lives provided was a resounding yes. Yes, courage is rewarded. Yes, love can grow in the most unlikely circumstances. Yes, Two people who commit to each other and work together can create something extraordinary. The snow fell that first night and continued to fall for many winters after, blanketing the Colorado mountains in white silence. But inside the house on the hill, there was always warmth. The warmth of a fire, the warmth of family, and the enduring warmth of a love story that began with a desperate plea for work and an unexpected response that changed two lives forever.